I'm Alfonso Mendoza, host of the My Ed Tech Life podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Bryon Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood, to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAtFive or check out my website, BryonCarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Hey PLN, it's July 12th, 2021. I'm out here and it's later in the evening, and I did not get out for a walk this morning as I typically do, but I did listen to the Innovators Mindset podcast with George Couros, and the episode that's called Our Biggest Barrier is to Innovation is Ourselves, or something like that. And so it just came out, and I appreciate you, George, sharing your thoughts about the barrier that we are, our own thinking and mindset, is to our lack of success and being productive and making strides and being innovative. So we need to believe that we can do something. And I like your story about how you talked about running a marathon, and you'll have to take a listen to George's episode as he talks about that, because it'll put a smile on your face. And George, fantastic work. Fantastic work. And you know, there's so many things that we do in our profession, in our classrooms, in our spaces, that we need to have faith that we can do some of these things and take a leap of faith and try some things, because you'll never know what can happen. It's been a fantastic year for myself for creativity and design with my Media Design 11 students and my other students, and the things that we did that I had to believe that we could do them. We did launch a podcast, which was fantastic. And had you told me that a year ago that we'd be doing that, I'd be like, no, let alone me having my own podcast, Fresh Air at 5, and into episode number 29 at this point. So this is the 29th episode, opening segment for that. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you listening. If you're listening on the daily on Twitter, I would encourage you to go over and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or your favorite podcatcher, and look for me and subscribe so that you can take in some of my reviews and the work that I do every day as far as walking in the morning, reflecting, and sharing what I'm learning with you. All right, thanks, George. We'll talk to you soon. Have a fantastic day to you all. Bye-bye. APLN Tuesday, July 13th, 2021, out here for Fresh Air at 5 this morning. Sun is not up yet, but it's coming pretty quick, and I'm excited about the day. Lots of things going on today with me. Got to work on some social media graphics for a conference I'm involved in with my PETA. Be excited about that coming up in the fall. And I just take some time to relax today. You know, we go pretty hard, and we need to actually enjoy the time to relax. So that will be quite fantastic. All right. So this morning, as I'm out for Fresh Air at 5, I listened to Jay and Pav on the Staff Room podcast talk with Tim Stevenson, Astro Stevenson, who is my neighbor down the road in Langley, British Columbia. And Tim, thanks for joining Jay and Pav and sharing some of your story, some of the reason behind why you wrote Beyond the Classroom, the book that just came out this past spring that you wrote. And I'm excited about diving into that. I haven't yet, so I will be getting into it. It's been just full, and so that's my excuse. But I will actually open your book today and get at it. So Thanks, Tim. Looking forward to seeing you on Friday as we go for the BC Podcasters Luncheon that is going to be taking place in Vancouver. And I'm excited to be part of this group of fantastic individuals who bring content to the airwaves and share their learning and understanding about education. So that's going to be quite fantastic. You know, Tim, it's about making a difference. It's about not settling for what has been, but asking the question of what could be. Yesterday, while I was out doing some errands, I listened to George Couros talk about the barrier to innovation is typically ourselves, and ourselves as individually on the micro level ourselves, or macro level as a group of people that don't believe that things can happen. He talked about the 4-minute mile and how for human history for many, many, many years it never happened, but then it happened one day, that it happens often. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye. One more thing for July 13th, 2021. The sun is coming up. Look at it. It's back there. Oh, you can't see it very well. Let's go like that. Oh, there's a sun coming up, and we are out here. I'm out here right now by myself. I was out here with the wee on Saturday morning looking at the sunrise as Tim Cavey joined me for Fresh Air at 5, which was a surreal experience because it's like I got somebody on my heels and I gotta keep moving. Anyhow, so that was a lot of fun. Thanks, Tim, for that. That was great. And looking forward to another opportunity with somebody else in the future to walk alongside me and enjoy a sunrise and reflection on podcast listening. All right, episode 197 of Teachers on Fire. Tim Cavey has had in the past and just brought to the fore Dr. Eric Geis. Eric, I didn't know you were a doctor. I didn't know. And that helps me understand you a little bit more. Fantastic to hear your story and journey of learning and how failure and those low moments that you have gone through have affected you, and that you got up and kept on moving and not settling and not being complacent. That's an important, very important thing that we need to make sure we're not doing, is getting complacent, getting melancholy in the things that we're doing, but that we keep on pushing and pushing and pushing and being better athletes and teachers than we were yesterday. That growth mindset's so fantastic. Appreciated hearing you talk about, a new podcast that I could listen to with, I think can't remember, something Smith, and I'm going to take a listen to that and take a look at that. And yes, fantastic to be able to have had a conversation with you and Nick on We Got Tech as we put together the Canva and Adobe Spark Slam down and the battle. And I'm still a Spark guy. I have used some Canva lately, and it's been really great. Appreciate you, Eric. Appreciate your enthusiasm for this thing we call education. Have a great day, Tim and Eric. One more thing for July 13th, 2021. This morning out for Fresh Air at 5, I listened to 2 podcasts. One was the Staff Room podcast, and the other was Teachers on Fire. On those podcasts, there were 5 people that I look up to and admire and appreciate the content creation that they do. It's fantastic to have been able to listen to Dr. Eric Geis talk with Tim Cavey, answering the same questions that Tim asked me about 2.5 years ago, about 2 years ago now, no, maybe 3 years ago now, on Teachers on Fire, episode 33. And Eric, I like hearing your story and the way you answer those questions, and how we all have our own way of bringing that to the front about how and what makes us crazy about education. The other podcast I listened to was the Staff Room podcast with Jay and Pav, and I admire you two very much and see that you're doing amazing work. And Tim Stevenson was guest, who's got his own podcast called Science 360. And Tim, I saw him at TEDx Langley, where he gave his TED Talk, and I have his book now. And it's just fantastic that we have a community of people through Twitter and social media that we never met face to face until moments in time that have made a huge difference in our lives. Looking forward to meeting Chan Pav in face to face in the future. Tim and I are going for lunch with Tim Cavey on Friday, and Eric, we got to get together, go out and do some geocaching up here in British Columbia. Come on up. Tim, you'd be glad. And Tim and I would be glad to show you around up here. Have a fantastic day. Just wanted to say thank you. And today I got to hear 5 of my favorite people talk about one of my favorite things, which is education. Happy day. Bye-bye. APLN Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. I'm out here for Fresh Air at 5 this morning, and it's a beautiful morning again. Thankful so much for the cooler times in this day. It's about 13 degrees Celsius right now, so comfortably cool, and it's going to warm up a bit here today, but not like our heat wave we had recently, so thankful for that. All right, this morning as I'm out walking, I listened to episode 198 of Teachers on Fire podcast as Tim brings us another interview that he had with an educator a while back, but he brings it to us this week. And thank you, Tim, for sharing your interview that you had with Jamal Crook out of Tampa Bay, Florida. Tampa or Tampa Bay? I'm not sure. Those might be 2 different cities. I don't know my Florida geography, so my apologies, Jamal, if I got that wrong. As I was listening, I was fascinated to hear about your journey of you getting into education and heading into PE, but then doing well and becoming a biology teacher and stepping into education that way. So the original direction that you took didn't necessarily be the direction that you went through to get to where you were as a first-year teacher. And then the story you told about being accused of having and helping your students cheat to be the best class in the school on the state test because you taught the standards. You know, that's exactly what I would have done and did do in my first year. I was like, what do we need to learn? And I looked at the curriculum and I went, this is what we need to learn. And I didn't explicitly put it on the screen and board that way. That was more me, like I guess you were supposed to do at the time. But, I did the exact same thing. I taught the students what they needed to know so that they could be successful on the test, because apparently the test was a big deal. So we had a lot of fun along the way. I made the learning relevant. I thought I did, and did that. So thanks, Jamal, for your authenticity and your connection. And I got one more thing to say in a moment. One more thing for July 14th, 2021, continuing my reflection on Jamal Crook's interview with Tim Cavey on Teachers on Fire, episode 198. Jamal, you taught the standards and got in trouble for teaching explicitly the standards. You know, I think if we are trying to raise a generation that understands how to be critical thinkers, we have to give them the language that we get. Like, why is the curriculum written for teachers so cryptic that students aren't supposed to understand it? Is it a trick? Is it a game that we're supposed to be playing to stumble our students? I really hope not. You know, that's a crummy way to look at those that write curriculum that we're trying to catch students so that they can fail, as opposed to teach students what they're supposed to learn so that they can be successful. You know, I hope that's not what education's going to. I don't believe it is. And yes, and being where you are in Tampa, in a district of 250 schools, I can't even fathom that. That's like owning $1 million. I can't even fathom that, you know? And that's a lot of schools. And as an administrator, it sounds like you spend a lot of your time doing teacher evaluations and growing a culture in your school of learners. So I was fascinated to hear that you spend 2 hours a day observing, and you said you'll do 15 teachers a day or something like that. That's a lot, you know. So I think teacher evaluations are important. they haven't been as rigorous where I am. We've gotten away from that and gotten into looking at teacher competencies and what are we interested in goal setting and things like that. But yes, that's something that I think is important, that we as educators be open to evaluation as well. Appreciate your conversation, Tim and Jamal. Have a fantastic day, gentlemen. Bye-bye. One more thing for Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. I'm listening to the 3 Caffeinated Coaches podcast, episode, I believe, 17. So I'll have to take a look at that and get it right in the tweet that I'm going to put out. But Becky and Shannon have a conversation with Debbie Tannenbaum. And Debbie, this is the second listen I've had this week where you've been a guest on a podcast. And it's fantastic to continue to hear your story, Debbie, because the more that we share our story in different places, and I was thinking about this yesterday as I was listening to other podcasts, Eric Geis with Teachers on Fire, just how we learn about each other and we hear other facets that one podcast may not draw out. And today, your journey into Twitter and how your principal that you're working with encouraged you to get into Twitter and how that Twitter story has unfolded for you. And you've been only in Twitter, you said, since 2017. That's fantastic. I've only been in Twitter since 2011. And a bit later today, I am actually going to be on the podcast with George Koros, and I heard you, Debbie, on George's podcast earlier this week, which was fantastic. So you did kind of get to meet him face to face like you said you wanted to here with Becky and Shannon. But I'm going to be on George's podcast, and one of the things we're going to talk about is the influence George had on me when he was a keynote speaker at a conference that I was at back in 2011. And right during the middle of his keynote, I signed up for Twitter and went, what the heck is this? And how do we use this? And that was where my journey began. So being a connected educator is super important. We are powerful together, and alone, we don't have the resources and the sounding boards to ask questions of others. So I'm really thankful for our podcast community and listening to stories from others, and Shannon and Becky for having Debbie on. Awesome. Have a great day, ladies. Bye-bye. Hey PLN, it's Thursday, July 15th, 2021, out here for Fresh Air at 5 this morning, and it's another beautiful morning. Sun's about to come up over the mountain. It's 13 cool degrees this morning with a bit of a breeze, so that's refreshing to have. And yes, this morning as I'm walking, I listened to My EdTech Life episode 77 with Fonz Mendoza as he talks with Dean Packard and Chris Starszewski. I apologize for mispronouncing your name there. And so these two gentlemen are the hosts of a podcast. Before that, they are husbands and fathers. They are family men. They are educators, and they're currently principals in their districts in the United States, and I can't remember where from. I think North Carolina or something like that. But they bring the passion and enthusiasm for being administrators and making a difference in their spaces. So they're also the hosts of Unlock the Middle podcast that you can catch on different spaces, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. And so thank you, gentlemen, for talking with Fonz this morning about your passion for growing your spaces and your teachers and your schools and school culture and how you are doing that. It's an encouraging message. We don't hear this message very often from our administrators, and we need to hear that, because us teachers that are in the trenches need to hear that our administrators got our backs and are supportive and those kinds of things. Appreciate you all. Thank you for sharing your story. And I am headed towards administration one day. I have not got the nod. I've applied a number of times, but it hasn't happened yet. And so just waiting it out and not being bitter with the system, but just waiting for my turn. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you all. Have a fabulous Thursday. Bye-bye. One more thing for Thursday, July 15th, 2021. Wrapping up Fresh Air at 5. I listened to the Fly Fishing University podcast. Sounds like school. It is Fly Fishing School with Jordan Ulrich. And he is out of Maple Ridge, British Columbia here, and is a podcaster and an educator of fly fishing. And so, Jordan, I appreciate listening to you. Thank you for putting your content out there. I haven't signed up for any of your courses yet, but what I'm learning and hearing from you on your podcast and your newsletter is fantastic, and I appreciate that. So educators out there, if you enjoy fishing and fly fishing, you should check out Fly Fishing University with Jordan Ulrich, and it's on your podcatcher. So fires me up. That's an area of passion for me, something that I really enjoy doing that is be outside of my regular education and professional life, and it is what I do for fun. I fly fish. Love it so much, so much. Makes me crazy. One day my wife asked me, how can we get some of that? Because we were at a barbecue eating sockeye salmon, and one thing turns into another, and now I am a fishing fanatic. Love it, so good. Don't have a big boat. I have a 12-foot tin boat, so that helps me get out onto some lakes. But as far as salmon fishing that I just listened to this morning, it is so much fun because these fish are so strong and they come around every year. All right, that's it for Thursday. I might have one more segment later, but if not, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye. One last thing for July 15th, 2021. Out for paper delivery walk, and it's been a nice morning to get that done now that it's summer vacation. Don't have to do it in the heat of the day. As I was walking, I listened to episode 199 of Teachers on Fire, and so Tim brought to us the audio from a roundtable discussion that happened a couple weeks back about the Assessment Consortium of British Columbia, and talking about assessment in classrooms and in our province, and the shift to go to a more gradeless and less numeric grading system for assessment, with formative assessment and feedback. And how do you know that an A is an A, and an A does not represent a student's learning but is a byproduct of their learning? And how do we get students to engage in their learning? How do we convince them and communicate and persuade them that learning for learning's sake has significant value? That's what I'm doing right here. I'm listening, I'm paying attention, and I believe I need to now get a book so that I can learn more about assessment. And so I think I'm going to take a look at Star Saxton's book and pick that book up. So saying it here on the daily, as well as on my podcast for episode 29 that's coming out next week, I will be picking up Star Saxton's book on hacking education. So that's my message for today. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy the sunshine. Bye-bye. Hey PLN, July 16th, 2021. It's an awesome day. It's a Friday. It's Friday of a week during the summer, and it marks the end of a week, and we're into the weekend. And this weekend, my wife has a long weekend, so we're gonna get out and play and go do some fun things with our friends and go kayaking and go hiking. And so I'm excited about that and looking forward to that change today that's happening at the end of the day as we move into the weekend. Another thing that's going on today is the BC Podcasters Luncheon that has been organized by Tim Cavey of Teachers on Fire. So thanks, Tim, for putting this together. And we discussed this a bit ago, and it's actually going to happen today. So that's super fun. Weather looks like it's promising. It was supposed to be gray and gross today. So hopefully when we're in Vancouver for lunch, the weather will be nice and we'll be able to see the mountains from where we are eating. So stay tuned for more on that. We'll have pictures and probably some audio out of that as we go through our day. All right, this morning as I'm walking, I listened to, I think it's episode 52 Nope, can't remember. It is the episode of Overthrowing Education with Bathsheba Frankel, and she talks to Mike Kalinke. I got that wrong as well. I apologize, Mike, but it's about PBL and SEL and how those two go hand in hand. So project-based learning and social emotional learning, and how we can use PBL to leverage and do projects and focus on SEL skills with our students, and not assessing SEL skills with a grade, but using the PBL to help talk about formative assessment of these things and how students are dealing with problems and critical thinking and collaboration and creativity and communication. It is built into PBL naturally, and how can we use SEL and how can we learn about ourselves through this process? Fantastic. Take a listen, and thank you so much, Bathsheba and Mike, for sharing your thoughts today. Have a fab day. Bye-bye. One more thing for July 16th, 2021, listening to 3 questions with Matt Makovich and Phil Januszewski on 3 questions with George Koros, the Innovators Mindset podcast. And gentlemen, thank you for joining George and talking with him and sharing who the inspiring educators, administrators, and advice you give yourself or a first-year teacher as you're moving into teaching. So fantastic to hear, George. Appreciate you bringing 3 questions, a quick snippet of the content that will follow in the greater podcast that you're going to put out. So thanks so much. I was privileged this past week to talk with George. So keep an eye open for my podcast and my 3 questions and the shout outs that I give to people that have made a difference in my life. All right. That's it for Friday. That's it for walking right now. And that's it for right now. I will probably have one more thought later today or something else to add on to this as we have podcaster lunch today. So super psyched, hanging out with some friends and podcasters from around the Lower Mainland here in BC. All right. Peace out, people. Have a great day. Bye-bye. BC content creators and podcaster lunch down at the Tap and Barrel in Vancouver, British Columbia, overlooking Falls Creek. No, it wasn't Falls Creek. It was Burrard Inlet near Stanley Park. Was fabulous. Tim Cavey, Tim Stevenson, Olivia Chan, Victoria Walder, and myself got together for lunch, talked about shop, talked about life, and it was great to hang out and get to know each other a little bit better. Thanks, Tim, for putting this on and getting us together, and it was a fantastic opportunity to build some relationships. Have a fabulous day, all, and thanks for listening to episode 29 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it. Following up on podcaster lunch. Following up on podcaster lunch and BC content creators lunch that happened that was provoked by